Welcome to another interview for the Kansas City Garment Industry Project. Today is May 3rd, 2011. I'm John Dvorak, and I'm interviewing Mary Agnes Alderman, who worked for a number of years in the garment industry in Springfield and also worked in Kansas City. The videographer is Mark Titus. Mary, why don't you just start off by telling us how you got into the clothing industry?
I think I was born, what we called it then was in the rag business. Shows my age too, I guess. I worked as an extra at Heer's during high school and college. And when I graduated from college, I became the sportswear buyer, the fashion coordinator, the model, anything to do with retailing and clothing, I did it, which meant 24/7.
Why did they call it the rag business?
I don't know. But you haven't heard that yet?
No. You certainly didn't deal in rags, did you?
No, but I suppose that refers to clothing.
I guess. What is an extra?
Extra is Saturdays, Christmas holidays, anytime, not a full-time employee, okay, that's it.
Why did you go to work in the store? Did you like clothing, or did you just need a job at that time?
Probably both of the above, but I liked clothing better than I needed a job.
And so did you go on and get schooling then beyond high school?
Yes, I graduated from Drury College, and then I've had master degree credit hours since then.
What was your degree in?
Economics.
And did you work during college at the
Yes.
at the store too?
Yes.
What happened after graduation then? Did you decide to make it a career?
I think it took me a while, and they pursued me because I was in the store frequently and I had worked in the store. So they took a chance.
What was your first full-time job with them?
My first full-time job was director of the sportswear department and buyer.
What did that mean? What were some of your duties?
My duties were to go to New York, select the clothing, see that it was delivered correctly, marked and on the floor, everything to do, manage the personnel.
What did you mean by sportswear back then?
Sportswear meant actually what we mean sportswear to be now. It's swimsuits, shorts, tops, skirts, anything that is not formal dress.
Informal attire.
Right.
For both men and women?
No, for women only.
You worked only in women's. What appealed to you about that kind of a job?
I loved clothing. I loved going to market. Since I was out of college for such a short time, I had a numerous list of models for fashion shows. They also told me what they wanted me to buy in New York for them, which I did.
How often would you go to New York?
Twice or 3 times a year.
Tell me how it was back then when you would go to New York. Did you make a round of shows?
Oh, yes.
Or did you go just to showrooms, or how did that work?
We went to showrooms. We had appointments. We saw the models. We saw the people who sold the clothing. And we made our own decisions about what to buy.
Did you have some parameters on what to buy from your superiors, or?
Of course, we had X number of dollars that we could spend. That's always a parameter, right?
I guess so. What about styles and stuff? Did they leave that up to you
Yes.
pretty much? What were you looking for?
Something different. Something that was not typical of an Ozark hillbilly. They teased me about when I was in New York. I was teased about people getting their feet caught in the escalator. That was the first escalator in Springfield. And they lined around the square to ride the escalator.
Was that right?
Oh yes, and I caught many going up the down one.
When would that have been?
Would have been in the
Early 50s?
mid-50s.
Mid-50s?
Uh-huh.
Well, how did they, before the escalator came in, how did they work?
Well, we had elevators.
Oh, steps or elevators.
And then stairs.
I see. Well, were you kind of seen as an Ozark hillbilly when you went to New York to do your buying?
Not really. If so, they didn't act that way.
Did you, I'm curious as to what you based your decisions on about what to buy. You say you wanted something that didn't look like an Ozark hillbilly. On the other hand, you couldn't get too edgy either,
Right.
could you? How did you make those
I
judgments?
suppose it was just the way I felt about it. It was a successful way. I mean, the clothes I bought sold immediately, and sometimes faster almost when they got on the floor. And the fashion shows helped too.
But it kind of was a gut feeling at the bottom
Oh, yeah.
line?
I still have it. I have a friend that I selected the dress she wore to her son's wedding without her. And she called me one day and she said, Mary Agnes, I have a friend I want you to help. And I said, what do you want me to do? What? And she said, I want you to take her shopping. And I said, the buck stops here. I'm not the personal shopper for the world. I will go for you. But she seriously wanted me to go with this friend and shop for her.
She wanted to tap into your judgment.
I guess.
Well, you
Either
should-
that or lack of good sense.
Well, you should take that as a compliment, shouldn't you? That
It is, though. It's times consuming.
Did you sometimes buy a line of clothing that didn't sell?
Oh, of course, we all did. I mean, anyone in the business has done that. I think probably one of the secrets to my success was if a customer had something on and perhaps her companion told her it looked great, and she looked at me and I'd say, don't buy it. It is not good for you. I still say that. And so consequently they came back to me because they had had many compliments on our selection. So
Now, at the time you were going to New York in the 50s, Kansas City had a garment industry too.
right.
Did you buy much that was made in Kansas City?
Actually, the main product from Kansas City were the Nellie Don clothing. What's the Nellie Don clothing? The salesman came to the store, and we had a very large Nellie Don department.
Kansas City made more formal suits and stuff, and so you wouldn't have been buying that, would you?
No.
But you bought a lot of Nellie Don stuff over the years?
I was not the actual Nellie Don buyer. The Nellie Don department was next to mine. I may have helped in selection, but I did not write the orders.
Now, the Kansas City garment industry came to you as opposed to you going
Right.
to Kansas City, as I understand it. So you never needed to make any buying trips up here.
You know, my trips up here were social.
I see. Nellie Don had its own department then
Yes.
in your store? And it was just her dresses?
Her clothing. She made more than dresses.
I guess that's right. Well, how long did you work for the store in Springfield?
I worked for about 5 years.
Were you married at that time?
No, I was not. I couldn't have been. I was married to the store.
Was it that bad you
Oh,
worked?
it was 24/7. It really was.
What took so much time? Or was it just hours in the store?
Well, first of all, the hours in which the store was open, you were usually on the floor seeing that, and I don't mean flat on the floor, I mean in presence. And then you had to check in the merchandise. You had to see that the department was well staffed. You had meetings, you had to do advertising, you name it. We did it.
You liked it though, didn't you?
It was fun.
What did you do for customers back then? Was it a more personal relationship between the store person and the customer as opposed to today where sometimes you can't even find a clerk?
Oh, you can't. No, we definitely, anyone that came in the department had service. That was, if you saw somebody wandering around and there wasn't a salesperson with them, you would immediately ask that person, the salesperson, to go help. It was a totally different idea. As you say, now you can't find them, but you could then.
And you would give advice to them and
Yes.
help them with the fitting and everything. You can't get any of that today, can you?
Maybe at Halls, maybe at some of the stores that have now gone out of business. Wolf Brothers, Saks, Hartsfield's. Those stores were still in the business of helping people, but not now.
But they don't exist anymore. Are there any stores today in Kansas City that approximate the kind of service that
I think
you provide?
Halls does. And I'm sure there are some of the new stores in Town Center and elsewhere that I'm not acquainted with. But not for Macy's, forget it. You're doing well if you find somebody to write up the ticket.
How do you feel about that?
I think that they're losing business. I think it shows in their returns for the year.
So it's not a trend that you see any
I don't.
value in?
No, I think I wouldn't go to a huge Walmart and spend half the day trying to find a department. It's not worth it.
Just out of curiosity, where do you shop today? Do you shop at Halls?
I shop at Halls, I shop at Macy's, I am a shopper. I go for fun.
Some of the smaller stores, like Chico's, that type of store, you don't patronize them?
No, my ex-daughter-in-law has, what is it, a store in Town Center, under the palm tree. It's, I also shop at Talbot's, and she sells lily ponchers. I've been in that store once, and she was at market. I haven't been back, but.
Well, going back to Springfield, you worked for the department store for about 5 years. What happened at the end of that time?
I decided that 24/7 was too much for me. So I resigned and resumed, or did not resume, started the teaching career.
Oh, really?
Oh yes, 3 months off, that sounded like a bit of heaven.
What did you teach?
I taught a primary.
Oh, So you just got out of the garment business altogether then. Did you miss it?
Not that much. I mean, I remember one time inventory was being taken in many departments in the store, not my department. And I had had a dinner date for a month on that same night. So, guess what I did?
You canceled the dinner date?
No, I did not. I went went out to dinner, and I caught hell for it. And I said, it wasn't my department being inventoried. Well, that really didn't matter. You're supposed to bring your bed, bunk, and whatever and stay here. So that was probably one of the beginnings.
Well, do you look back fondly on it though?
Oh, yes,
even though it was difficult.
It was fun. We had a giant rebuilding process. I mean, the store was just in shambles as they were building. And I did probably my first fashion show for the whole city of Springfield. I dressed the models, I wrote the commentary, I gave the commentary. How I did it, I'll never know, but it was done.
Did you have any training in how to do those things before you worked at the store? Or
Not really.
you just did it?
That's the story of my life.
Just do it? Did you have any help or any colleagues that were more experienced than you? Or?
Not really. Most of my cohorts were about the same age. And I would have them as models, and they would tell me what they would like for me to look for in the New York market. We also had buyers coming to our store that were not in the New York market, were in the California market or the Dallas market. But the only one, to my knowledge, was the Nellie Don, in my experience.
I see. Did you model yourself?
Yes. You never know it now, but constantly.
The way you're dressed, I would know it.
Oh, thank you.
You could.
It took me a while to decide what to wear for this.
No, you look wonderful, and I can see why you would have been a model. Was that part of the work that you liked, or
Oh,
or
yes.
not?
It's fun. Even swimsuits.
You modeled swimsuits?
You got any pictures?
No, I do, but I'm not pulling them out. I was much. In fact, I had a Nellie Don show at the Irish Museum. And my wedding dress I made with the help of Nellie Don. They did the covered buttons and the loops on the back of the dress. So I thought it would be interesting to put that dress in the show. And my granddaughter, whom I think is skinny as heck, could hardly get into the dress. I thought, my God, what happened to you?
Is this a recent show, or?
Yes, it was probably 3 years ago.
I see.
We had well over 300 people at the Irish Museum for the show. And it was very casual, very informal. No ramps, no anything. They just walked among the people. You know, it's kind of like shows used to be in tea rooms. And maybe now, where you stop, if somebody likes a dress, you stop and you discuss it. They do it at Neiman's in Chicago still. So
Was that how you did it in Springfield?
that's how, no, in Springfield we had the whole bale of wax, the runway and the whatever.
Oh, you had music and
Oh, yes.
and everything.
So,
The Irish Museum in Union Station?
yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Well, you brought up Nellie Don a couple of times. Did you ever meet her back then?
No, I didn't. My sister-in-law took care of her as a nurse in the Walnuts before she died, but I never met her.
What did you think of her clothing back in the 50s?
She was outstanding. I mean, the clothing was outstanding. People had wandered around in these horrible house dresses that was just the uniform of the lady of the house, and she brought style and economy to the fashion world.
Do you recall, did she sell pretty well in Springfield?
Oh, of course. She sold very well. I think she sold well wherever she was sold. And not only that, but I had my friend that helped me with the wedding dress was an employee, and she treated her employees well. They had a place out in South Kansas City that was a pool and all kinds of recreational facilities. And I think that was one of her secrets to success, is the fact that she treated her employees so nicely.
Her clothing was made around here. When you bought sportswear in New York, that would have been pretty much all made in the USA at that time?
Oh, yes. Yeah, but I was not in the league of couture, of Parisian garments or that. We were not that high up yet.
Did you ever imagine that we would get to a time where none of that sportswear is made in the USA, or virtually none of it?
Actually, I haven't thought of it, but that's true. I suppose you'd have to look hard to find a made in the USA.
You could find a little something, but
Right, not much.
Not a great deal. What happened to the store in Springfield?
I suppose time. I wasn't in Springfield at that time, but I suppose the time and the economy and maybe they didn't have smart buyers like me that are getting people in to buy the clothes. Never thought of it that way, but who knows?
The store ultimately went out of business.
Uh-huh.
Do you know about when it did?
No. It would have been maybe mid-60s,
Oh, that
early
far-
70s. It's
that
been
far
gone a
back.
long time.
How did you feel when you found out that it was gone?
I'd cry tomorrow.
That's a Susan Hayward line.
You really,
That's true. No, it didn't. I mean, I was too busy doing other things. I really didn't cry.
It didn't really bother you very much. Well, some people are sad when they think back of the stores that have disappeared, including the Jones store here. Well, how did you go from being a teacher in Springfield to coming to Kansas City then?
I went from being a buyer in Springfield to coming to Kansas City to teach.
Oh, you taught here.
Uh-huh.
Well, where did you teach?
I taught at Nelson. Many schools. I had 5 children who were always hungry. And as long as I had 5 hungry children, I could always find a teaching job. And I was out when the children were out of school and stuff.
Well, with 5 children, you needed to find a job too, I suppose.
Well, they're all doctors and pilots and whatever. They take care of me now, so that's good.
How long did you teach?
I would 20 plus years, off and on.
Well, then, did you dabble in the clothing business in town here?
I worked at Swanson's 2 summers. They wanted me to stay. That's when Mrs. Schaefer and the sisters were there. That's when, and I don't think this should be in the interview, I'll tell you after it's over.
Okay.
But some prominent people in Kansas City shopped at Swanson's. And that's when Trujillo was so well-known, quote unquote, in Haiti, I believe.
Cuba.
Cuba?
The
No.
Dominican Republic, actually.
Okay.
Was it
because
true?
he wasn't Cuba.
Oh,
Okay,
it was
so-
the Dominican
I'm sorry.
Republic.
But his entire entourage came to Swanson's, and we sold them many, many things.
Really?
Right,
You mean his family members? Or
right.
Did he come?
No, he did not.
They were
Or he-
looking for a top quality store?
Right. And I mean, and they bought many, many things. One of the alteration ladies would not come up and would not help them because she was from the country that was treated badly by him. She was a native.
Did you wait on them?
Of course. I had Spanish background too. You name it. French.
Well, that's really interesting. How were they to deal with?
Oh, just like anybody else.
Did you
That's when he was dating Kim Novak.
Well, he dated a lot of women.
I know, but I think she was one of the sharpest.
Who came up? Was it his relatives or?
I think it was his wife, his sisters, the whole crew. I mean, there were probably 10 people with him.
What did they buy? Do you remember?
Oh, mostly, as you said, evening dresses and high quality merchandise.
So Swanson's at that time was a really sharp place.
Oh, yes. It was,
Tell me a little bit about it back then.
well, it was owned by two sisters, or it was run by two sisters. One was Miss Schaefer, the other was Miss Swanson, who married a gentleman whose name was Swanson. And they had designer fashions. I usually ended up owning more at the end of the summer than I had made.
Even with your employee discount?
Oh yes, that didn't help that much, but it was definitely a first class operation.
What made it that?
Well, the number one is the merchandise. People wouldn't come if the merchandise were not excellent, and the service and the whole thing. It was just from cosmetics to handbags to shoes, the whole spectrum of clothing, and nicely handled.
Now this would have been in the late 50s or?
It would have been in the mid-50s, probably 56, 57.
Now you said you worked for him for 2 summers.
Uh-huh.
What did you do? What were your duties?
Well, I was a salesperson, and I filled in for people who were on vacation.
You were not a buyer.
And one person, as I said, I will not name the people in Kansas City who were clients, but I sold this one lady a lot of clothes. And when her regular salesperson came back, she said, she'll never buy anything but on sale from now on. In other words, I had ruined it for her where I thought I was doing her a favor. So.
Did a lot of prominent people in town, prominent women in town shop there?
Oh yes. And some of them would watch the sale price just as maybe you or I would, and wait until it did go down. Others, it didn't matter.
Was it considered the top store of its kind?
I
in
would
town?
think so. I would think maybe Wolf Brothers and Hartsfield's were very close to the same level. However, they were much larger. And then the Halls, Swanson's went to Halls as an end place. So I was offered a buying job at Halls. After 3 interviews, the president told me that I would be either assistant buyer in furs or in better dresses. And I asked what the salary was, and he told me, and I said, my son makes more than that busting at Old Chico's. But
There was a lot of money to be made in that line.
The only people still that make money in that line are the upper echelon. Most of these people that you see working at Macy's or other stores are making minimum wage. And as the president of Halls told me, well, you get the discount and you could buy the clothes. And I said, I don't think I'd be able to buy a scarf for that amount of money. But I did have, with Mr. Cracker, I did a fashion show for Adler's. And I did that just around the pool at the Russell Stover house.
Tell me about that.
That was the same old, same old. I mean, I recruited the models, I dressed them, I had complete control over what went on, wrote the fashion show, described the dresses, arranged the procession, whatever. And my soon-to-be husband got to put up about 300 chairs around the pool.
And where was the Stover Mansion? Is that the one?
It's the one where Hellsberg's is now. Right?
It's on Mission Drive, approximately 5,800.
And they had a swimming pool?
Right. That's when the Stovers lived there.
Yeah.
But isn't that the Helms?
The Hellsbergs.
Right.
Shirley and Barnett bought it about 15 years ago and completely redid it inside and out.
And it needed.
Why was it held at a private home? Or was that the way they did?
Well,
fashion
no.
shows at
It
that
was my college sorority had it. And it wasn't a money-making thing. It was just an affair.
Oh, I thought you said it was for Adler's.
The clothing was
I see.
Adler's.
I see. Did you work for Adler's at some point in time? You worked only for Swanson here in town.
Right.
I see. Now you worked for them, you said 2 summers. Was that then the end of your career in the clothing business?
The fashion show at Adler's was after that. And the fashion show at the Irish Museum was about 3 years ago. Kathy Quinn was our commentator.
The television news lady.
And
Yeah.
she just is so good.
And that was the show you were telling us about earlier of Nellie Dunn.
Right. That was not really, but maybe a money raiser. I said there's not an Irish lady in town that doesn't have a $10 bill hidden someplace. And that's what the mission was.
Where did you get the fashion, the Nellie Dunn clothing?
Terrence O'Malley, who's written a book about it, he and his wife have the clothing. And she brought the clothing up here. There was a rack over there. And the models would come up and they chose the dresses and tried them on. And then we put them on another rack. And they wore the clothing to the fashion show. So that eliminated that change. And then changed it before they left.
When would those dresses have been made, approximately?
In the 50s.
50s and 60s, maybe?
And someone in this building, whose name I will not divulge, had an afternoon dress on, and she would have looked perfectly in style with anything that was going right now. The dresses were just timeless.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did you feel about the dresses now, even though they were 40 or more years old?
It's incredible, and you know, and I know, that good fashion does not go out of style. And that was perfect proof. The dresses were probably below the knees, well designed, the color was great. It was a fun thing.
Can you get dresses like that today?
I have a hard time shopping for dresses. I have better dresses in my closet than I can find in the store.
Well, if you're correct, and I'm sure you are, that her dresses still look really good, why can't women get that kind of thing today?
Well, it has something to do with designers. It has something to do with 3-year-olds wearing dresses that are suited for teenagers or older. It's the modern look at fashion, I suppose. I mean, I'm not going to wear something that is scoop neck up to here, but a lot of people are.
What do you think overall of the fashions that are available today?
I'm not fond of them.
Is there much out there that's good?
I'm sure there is, but people my age, as you well know, and in that age group and below say the same thing I do. There's no point in shopping, they can't find anything.
Do you think that'll change?
Do you think what?
Do you think that will ever change?
Oh, of course it will.
Will we go back to a better?
When they don't, well, we haven't, I know that you two have seen fashion repeat itself, and it does. It's like history repeats itself. They will come back, and they will be accepted. And these little rags that people are wearing will be gone.
When did you retire as a teacher?
I actually was a tutor a couple of years ago. Just went in on my own time and nothing to do with the district.
But you haven't really been retired all that long then,
No,
if you were tutoring a couple of years ago. You haven't done anything in the fashion business since the Nellie Dawn show?
No, except attend Civil's meetings.
Do you have any desire to do any more fashion shows, or?
Well, I would. It's not a matter of being paid for it. It's just fun.
What do you think of the effort to try and preserve some of the history of the garment industry in
I
Kansas
think
City?
it's incredible. Sybil Khan is a woman you will never ever meet like anyone like her or forget her. She is just, the work that has gone into this is just incredible. And she has a great committee. I have no idea why I was chosen, but she insisted that I be on it, and that, as I say, I guess I didn't make the rags, I just sold them.
Do you think people in town realize there once was a clothing manufacturing industry here?
No, I think that's part of Sybil's mission, is to bring that idea back.
Do you think the younger people just have no?
Oh no,
No
and
idea.
well, when we were younger people, and I probably should exclude you two being so young, but people dressed to go to church. People wore hats to go to church. I got in such terrible trouble at home once because I wore blue jeans to a theater to see a movie.
Who'd you get in trouble with?
My mother to think that I would go someplace dressed like that.
She thought that was
Oh.
highly inappropriate.
And then it was funny when I met my daughter in Chicago's future in-laws. They were high on the echelon, and I thought, here they think this little country girl's coming in. I wish I could wear one of those bonnets that they wear in Laura Ingalls and bring the flowers that I brought her. I wanted to, so badly to bring them in a basket, but I didn't. Sometimes I do with the proper thing, but that was temptation.
Well, do you own a pair of blue jeans?
Probably 4 or 5.
So you do wear them?
Oh, yes. My mother is no longer alive to tell me it's improper attire.
So you think it is proper in certain
Oh, of course.
circumstances?
It's accepted. You had some recent public figure in Kansas City had $2,400 spent on blue jeans. Now, I don't have those kind. They would have really had to be on sale. But
Well, I think I about run out of questions, but I've enjoyed getting your recollections, and maybe you'll do another fashion
who
show at
knows?
some point in the future, and I can actually attend.
It was, well, and this I don't really think should be in the interview either, but
We're through.
Okay, I'm gonna
uh,
go out.
I had a bet with someone